The Galactic Council faced their first crisis in 3,000 years. The detection systems at the edge of Alliance space had picked up a fleet of unknown ships moving toward the core worlds. The vessels used old-style aggressive designs with weapon ports and armor plating that had not been seen since before the Great Pacification. High Counselor Thex convened an emergency session. His crystalline form pulsed with confused patterns of light as he tried to process concepts as pacified. Mind could barely understand. "The ships carry the signature of Devour technology," reported Counselor Nexus, "but this is impossible. The Devourers were exiled beyond the galactic rim. They cannot have survived so long in the void." "Perhaps they have come to seek peace," suggested Council Member Yith hopefully. 3,000 years in exile may have taught them the value of harmony. Ambassador Zenth transmitted data from his monitoring stations. "The fleet has ignored all communication attempts. They are moving directly toward inhabited systems without responding to our greetings or peace offerings." Vex felt something he had not experienced since his pacification, a flutter of what his ancestors might have called fear. But pacified minds could not truly comprehend danger, so he interpreted it as concern for proper diplomatic protocol. "We must show them that we mean no harm," Vex decided. "Send a delegation to welcome them back to civilization." While the council debated proper greeting ceremonies, a test was unfolding on the mining world of Kepler 442b. The planet's automated systems had suffered a cascade failure, trapping 300 Valerian workers in underground tunnels that were slowly collapsing. The Alliance's 3 most advanced rescue services responded immediately. The Zephyrions sent their finest automated rescue drones, machines programmed with every possible scenario and equipped with the most advanced sensors. The drones arrived within hours but could not fit through the narrow tunnel entrances that led to the trapped workers. The Aquinas deployed their underwater rescue specialists, beings whose entire culture was built around saving those lost in their planet's vast oceans. Their equipment was designed for liquid environments and malfunctioned in the dry tunnels, while their peaceful nature prevented them from making the aggressive modifications needed to adapt quickly. The Celestians offered their advanced scanning technology and promised to coordinate a careful, methodical rescue operation. They began running simulations and forming committees to study the optimal approach. Their timeline showed a rescue completion in approximately 60 hours. The trapped Valerians did not have 60 hours. The tunnel supports were failing at an accelerating rate. On Earth, Lieutenant Commander Paul Green received the emergency broadcast and immediately requested permission to deploy a human rescue team. The Galactic Council granted permission, expecting the primitive humans to fail like the others. At least their failure would demonstrate why pacification was necessary for civilized society, Captain. Nina Torres assembled her team within 30 minutes. She chose military engineers who specialized in combat rescue operations, paramedics trained to work under fire, and search specialists who had pulled survivors from earthquake rubble and collapsed buildings. "This is not a military operation," Torres briefed her team as their ship accelerated toward Kepler 442b. "But we're going to approach it like one. We go in fast, we improvise, we adapt, and we bring everyone home." Sergeant Dan Cooper, her second-in-command, studied the tunnel schematics. The Zephyrian drones failed because they followed their programming instead of thinking creatively. The Aquinas failed because they tried to use wrong tools instead of modifying them. The Celestians are going to fail because they're planning instead of acting. What would we do differently?" asked Medic Kate Johnson. "We break things," Cooper said simply. "We take equipment designed for one purpose and make it do something else. We take risks that their safety protocols won't allow. We move fast enough to stay ahead of the collapse." The human rescue ship reached Kepler 442b in 18 hours, using a high-risk trajectory that would have horrified Alliance safety inspectors. Torres immediately deployed her team to the mine entrance. While the ship was still landing, the observing aliens watched in amazement as the humans began ripping apart mining equipment and rebuilding it into rescue tools. They welded cutting torches onto exploration drones, turned or transporters into tunnel supports, and modified atmospheric processors into air pumps for the trapped areas. They are destroying perfectly good equipment, observed the Zephyrian. Rescue coordinator, this violates all proper procedures? Torres ignored the alien criticism and led her team into the unstable tunnels. The humans moved with controlled urgency, making rapid decisions without the lengthy consultations that marked Alliance operations. They found the first group of trapped Valerians within 2 hours. The aliens were huddled together in a side chamber, too frightened and passive to attempt their own rescue. The humans immediately began evacuating them while Cooper's team worked to stabilize the tunnels. "Why do you risk yourselves for strangers?" asked one rescued Valerian. "Because that's what people do," Torres replied, not stopping her work to explain concepts the alien could not understand. The tunnel system was more unstable than the scans had indicated. As the humans pushed deeper to reach the remaining trapped workers, a major support beam cracked with a sound like thunder. The Celestian monitoring team immediately broadcast warnings that the entire section was about to collapse. Cooper studied the situation for exactly 30 seconds before making a decision that would have been impossible for any pacified species. "Captain, I can trigger a controlled collapse in Section 7. It will seal off the unstable area and give us time to get the last group out of Section 8. "That puts you right in the collapse zone," Torres replied. "I know, but it's the only way to save the others." Torres understood immediately. In human military thinking, acceptable losses were part of every operation. Sometimes someone had to take the dangerous position so others could survive. "Do it," she ordered. Cooper placed shaped charges with the precision of a combat engineer and evacuated his immediate area. The explosion brought down tons of rock exactly where he intended, sealing off the unstable zone and stopping the cascade collapse. The concussion knocked him unconscious, but his sacrifice gave Torres time to extract the final group of Valerians. The human team pulled all 300 trapped workers to safety in 14 hours, faster than any Alliance rescue service had thought possible. Cooper survived his injuries, though he spent 3 days in the station medical bay. The rescue operation created an unexpected problem for the Galactic Council. News of human courage and effectiveness spread through Alliance communication networks. Young beings on multiple worlds began asking questions their species had not heard for millennia. "Why cannot we act with such decisiveness?" asked a Valerian. "Student, why do we require committee approval for emergency responses? These humans risk themselves for strangers without hesitation," observed a Mindara youth. "Why do our safety protocols prevent such heroism?" Worse, the rescued Valerians themselves were changed by their experience. They had seen beings who acted without fear, who made instant decisions, who treated dangerous situations as problems to be solved rather than disasters to be endured. Worker Zen, who had been trapped longest in the deepest tunnel, approached Captain Torres before the humans departed. "You saved our lives by thinking like warriors instead of rescue workers. You broke equipment to make it work better. You risked everything to help people you had never met." Torres was puzzled by his tone. "That's just what anyone would do." "No," Zen replied. "That is what humans would do. We could not. Our minds cannot even conceive of such actions. We would have waited for the proper procedures and died waiting." As the human rescue ship departed Kepler 442b, the Galactic Council realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had not just invited primitive barbarians to join their peaceful civilization. They had revealed their weakness to beings who were everything the Alliance was not: decisive, adaptable, and willing to sacrifice for others. High Counselor Vex received the final report on the rescue operation and felt something his pacified mind could not identify. In his ancestors it might have been called fear, but pacified beings could not truly understand danger, even when it was staring them in the face. The humans had not just saved Valerian lives. They had demonstrated that 3,000 years of peace had left the Alliance defenseless against anyone who remembered how to fight. And somewhere at the edge of the galaxy, the Devourers were still coming. High Counselor Thex floated in his meditation chamber, his crystalline body glowing with soft purple light. The Mindari had evolved in gas clouds where physical form was fluid, and Thex's thoughts moved like shifting mist. He was troubled by the human response to their generous offer. They refused pacification, he said to the Council Assembly. His voice resonated through quantum frequencies that reached every member across the galaxy. They claim that aggression and competition are essential to their nature. Council member Yith, whose species resembled giant flowers with thinking petals, rustled in confusion. Essential? How can destructive impulses be essential? This makes no sense. Perhaps they simply do not understand what we offer, suggested Ambassador Zenth, who had returned from Earth orbit. The species is young. They may fear the procedure because they have never seen its benefits. Thex considered this. The Mindari were known for their patience and wisdom. Show them recordings of our worlds. Let them see what true peace looks like. Once they understand, they will surely choose civilization over barbarism. The Council approved the plan unanimously, as they did with all decisions. Conflict was impossible. When every member had been pacified for millennia, on Earth, Colonel Ryan Bell led a team of military analysts in reviewing the alien data that arrived the next week. The humans had expected to see advanced cities, incredible technology, and thriving cultures. What they saw instead made them uncomfortable. Look at this, Bell said, pointing to footage from the Valerian homeworld. Perfect cities, no crime, no conflict, no problems, but also no growth, no change, no advancement. These buildings are identical to ones built 3,000 years ago. Dr. Sarah Kim, a psychologist specializing in human behavior, studied recordings of Valerian daily life. They don't compete at anything. No sports, no games, no contests. Children don't even play fight. They just exist together in perfect harmony. It's not harmony, Bell said grimly. It's stagnation. The footage showed beings who moved through life without urgency, passion, or drive. They worked because they were assigned tasks, not because they wanted to achieve anything. They interacted politely, but without the emotional intensity that marked human relationships. They're like living robots, said Lieutenant Tony Garcia, Bell's intelligence officer. Biological machines following their programming. Dr. Kim pulled up brain scans the aliens had provided. Look at this. The areas responsible for competitive drive, territorial instincts, and fight-or-flight responses have been completely removed. But those same areas in humans control innovation, risk-taking, and protective behaviors. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was conducting their own analysis of human behavior. What they discovered horrified them beyond measure. Council member Zenth presented his findings to the Assembly. Humans voluntarily engage in activities they call sports, where they attempt to defeat each other in ritualized combat. They watch recordings of historical battles for entertainment. They create fictional stories about war and conflict. Surely this is exaggeration. Yith protested. Zenth displayed human entertainment media on the Council's viewing systems, movies about soldiers, boxing matches, competitive games, war documentaries. The Council members recoiled in shock. They celebrate violence, whispered Counselor Nexus, whose robotic form sparked with distressed electrical pulses. They teach their young to fight through something called martial arts. They have entire institutions dedicated to the study of warfare. Vex's crystalline form dimmed with sadness. They are more primitive than we imagined. They have not just failed to evolve beyond aggression, they have made it central to their culture. The Council decided to send living examples of pacified civilization to Earth. Perhaps seeing perfected beings in person would convince the humans to abandon their violent ways. A delegation of representatives from different Alliance species arrived at Luna Station 2 weeks later. There was Kira, a Valerian philosopher who had lived in perfect contentment for over 2 centuries. Mex, a Zephyrian engineer, whose species had once been explorers but now maintained their technology without seeking to improve it. And Hollow, a Celestian artist whose people had stopped creating new art forms after achieving perfect harmony. Captain Jake Morrison met with them in the same conference room where the first contact had occurred. Admiral Chun joined him, along with Dr. Kim and several other Earth representatives. "We have come to show you what you could become," Kira said in her gentle voice. "We are examples of what peace can achieve." Dr. Kim leaned forward with professional curiosity. "Kira, what do you do when you disagree with someone?" Kira looked puzzled. "Disagree? I do not understand." "When someone wants to do something you don't want to do. When you have different opinions about what's right." "We cannot have different opinions about what is right," Kira replied. "Right is what serves the collective good. All pacified beings understand this." Admiral Chun tried a different approach. "Mechs, your people were explorers. Don't you ever want to see new places, discover new things?" Mech's large eyes blinked slowly. "We have seen enough. We know enough. Exploration creates want, and want creates suffering. We are content with what we have." "But what if you could improve life for your people? Make better technology, find new resources?" "Better?" Mech seemed genuinely confused by the concept. "Our technology serves our needs. Why would we want more than we need?" Jake felt frustrated. "Hollow, you're an artist. Don't you want to create something new? Something that's never been made before?" "Art serves to bring peace and harmony," Hollow replied. "We perfected our art forms long ago. Creating new forms would only cause confusion and disrupt the balance we have achieved." After the delegation left, the humans sat in silence. "They're not people anymore," Dr. Kim said finally. "They're just biological systems maintaining themselves without purpose or growth." "They can't even understand the concepts we're talking about," Admiral Chun added. "Competition, improvement, creativity, these ideas literally don't exist in their minds." Jake stared out at the stars. "They think they've achieved perfection. But they've actually achieved death. They're just too pacified to realize it." "Colonel." Bell's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, you need to see this. We've been analyzing their technology and social systems. I think we found something important." In the intelligence briefing room, Bell displayed his analysis on the main screen. "Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly old. Most of it was developed before they underwent pacification. Since then, they've made almost no innovations." "What about their society?" Admiral Chun asked. "Stable but static. No major changes in 3,000 years. No art movements, no scientific breakthroughs, no social evolution. They've essentially stopped developing as civilizations." Dr. Kim studied the data. "It makes sense. Innovation requires risk-taking and competition. Scientific advancement needs people willing to challenge existing ideas. Art needs passion and individual expression. They've removed all of that from their brains." "There's something else," Bell continued. "We found references to something called the Devourers in their historical records. A species that was exiled from Alliance space 3,000 years ago for refusing pacification. The records are vague, but it sounds like there was a war." Jake felt a chill. "A war that the Alliance won only because they hadn't been pacified." "Yet, exactly, but now they have no memory of how to fight. No understanding of strategy or tactics or warfare. If the Devourers ever came back... Admiral Chun finished the thought. "The Alliance would be helpless." As if summoned by their words, an emergency communication arrived from the Galactic Council. High Counselor X's image appeared on the screen, his crystalline form flickering with distressed light. "Humans of Earth," he said, his musical voice strained with an emotion the humans had never heard from the aliens before. "We have detected ships at the edge of our territory, unknown vessels moving with hostile intent. We believe the Devourers have returned." The communication ended abruptly. Jake looked at his colleagues. "I think the galaxy is about to learn why humans were never pacified." The rescue at Kepler 442b had consequences no one expected. Within days of the human team's departure, mining productivity on the planet increased by 300%. The Valerian workers had abandoned their careful, committee-approved procedures and adopted human methods of rapid decision-making and equipment modification. Worker Zen became an unofficial leader among his people, teaching others what he had learned from watching the humans work. They do not wait for permission to act, he told groups of fascinated Valerians. They see a problem and solve it immediately. This philosophy spread like a virus through Valerian society. Young Valerians began questioning why they needed approval for every action, why they could not compete with each other to improve their skills, why they had to accept slow, safe solutions when faster methods existed. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to address what they termed human contamination of alliance cultures. High Counselor Thex's crystalline form flickered with distressed patterns as he addressed the assembly. 3 member species have formally requested information about reversing their pacification procedures, he announced. This is unprecedented in 3,000 years of Alliance history. Council member Yith rustled with confusion. Reversing pacification? But that would restore their capacity for aggression and conflict. Why would any civilized being want such primitive instincts? Ambassador Zenth, who had spent time observing humans, tried to explain. The rescue operation demonstrated that human aggressive instincts serve purposes beyond violence. Their willingness to fight extends to fighting for others, fighting against disasters, fighting to save lives. Fighting is fighting, protested Counselor Nexus. There is no difference between constructive and destructive aggression. All conflict leads to chaos. But the Alliance's leading scientists disagreed. Dr. Amanda Clark, the human psychologist, had been invited to present her research via quantum communication link. Her words would shake the Council's understanding of civilization itself. Honored Council members, Dr. Clark began, your species have misunderstood the relationship between conflict and progress. Human aggression did not evolve for destruction. It evolved for protection, competition, and advancement. She displayed brain scans showing human neural activity during different situations. When humans compete in sports, the same brain regions activate as during combat. But this competition drives us to improve ourselves, to innovate, to excel. When humans face danger, our aggressive responses help us protect others and overcome obstacles. Dex's form dimmed with confusion, but humans engage in warfare. They kill each other. How can this be beneficial? Human warfare evolved from our need to protect our families and communities, Dr. Clark explained. The same instincts that made us fight predators and rival tribes also made us willing to sacrifice for strangers, as you saw during the rescue operation. She switched to historical data. Human innovation peaks during times of conflict because competition forces rapid development. Our greatest technological advances, our finest art, our most profound philosophy all emerge from periods of struggle and challenge. The Council members absorbed this information with growing alarm. They had spent 3 millennia believing that conflict was the enemy of progress, only to discover that they might have eliminated the very force that drove civilization forward. Meanwhile, Captain Nina Torres and her rescue team remained on Kepler 442b to help rebuild the mining operation. They had expected to work with grateful but passive Valerians. Instead, they found themselves training aliens who hungered to learn human methods. Teach us to think like you, Zen requested. Show us how to make decisions without committees, how to modify equipment quickly, how to accept risks for greater gains. Torres was uncomfortable with the role of teacher, but she could see the changes in the Valerians. They moved faster, spoke with more energy, and approached problems with newfound creativity. It's not about thinking like humans, she told them. It's about thinking like individuals. You've been taught to always consider the group, but sometimes one person needs to make a choice and act on it. The changes went beyond work methods. Valerian young began engaging in activities their species had forgotten. Games with winners and losers, competitions to see who could solve problems fastest, even playful arguments about the best way to accomplish tasks. Their elders watched with growing concern. This is not how Valerians behave, they complained to the Council. The humans have introduced chaos into our peaceful society. But the young Valerians saw it differently. This is not chaos, Zen argued. This is life. We have been existing, not living. The humans showed us the difference. The crisis deepened when similar changes began appearing on other Alliance worlds. Young Mindari started questioning their elders' decisions. Zephyrian engineers began experimenting with new designs without permission from the planning committees. Celestian artists created works that expressed individual emotions rather than collective harmony. The Alliance faced its first internal rebellion in 3,000 years, sparked by exposure to a single human rescue team. High Counselor Thex convened a private meeting with the Alliance's medical advisors. Can pacification be reversed? He asked the chief medical officer, an ancient healer whose species had performed the original procedures, rippled with distress. Impossible. The neural modifications are permanent. The brain pathways for aggression, competition, and individual ambition have been completely removed. They cannot be restored. Then how do we stop this human influence from spreading? We cannot, the healer replied. The young of our species are trying to think in ways their brains are no longer capable of. They desire change but lack the neural structures to achieve it. This will only lead to frustration and social breakdown. As the Council struggled with internal crisis, the external threat continued to approach. The Devourer fleet had reached the outer colonies and was systematically destroying every Alliance outpost in their path. The attacks followed no pattern the Alliance could understand. The Devourers ignored valuable resources, strategic positions, and population centers. They seemed interested only in destruction for its own sake. They are not trying to conquer us, Counselor Nexus reported. They are trying to eliminate us completely. This is warfare without purpose or logic. Admiral Lisa Shun, monitoring the situation from Earth, saw a different pattern. They're testing your defenses, she told the Council during an emergency communication. Each attack probes a different type of target to learn how you respond. We respond with peace offerings and diplomatic missions, Thex replied. We attempt to communicate and find common ground. And they destroy your ships without listening, Chun pointed out. You're giving them intelligence about your capabilities while learning nothing about theirs. The truth was worse than the Admiral realized. The Alliance had no military capabilities to analyze. Their defense fleets consisted of rescue ships and patrol vessels designed to assist with emergencies, not fight battles. Their weapons were industrial tools that had never been designed for warfare. The pacified species literally could not understand the concept of studying an enemy to defeat them. Their minds had been modified to see cooperation and harmony. When faced with beings who rejected both, they had no mental framework for response. Captain Jake Morrison arrived at Alliance headquarters aboard the human battleship Colorado, one of Earth's most advanced warships. The vessel looked primitive compared to Alliance technology, but it had been designed by minds that understood conflict. The Alliance Council members recoiled when they saw the ship's weapon systems, armor plating, and military design. To their pacified sensibilities, it looked like a machine built purely for destruction. Why do you bring weapons to a diplomatic meeting? Dix asked. Because your enemies are coming, Morrison replied. And they're bringing weapons to a war. He displayed tactical analysis of the Devourer attacks. They're not random destroyers. They're testing your response time, studying your ship designs, learning your communication protocols. This is a systematic military campaign. We do not understand military campaigns, admitted Counselor Nexus. Such concepts were removed from our thinking long ago. Morrison stared at the assembled council members, representatives of 47 species with technology centuries ahead of Earth's, reduced to helplessness by their own attempt at perfection. Then you need to learn, he said quietly. Because they're coming for your core worlds next, and when they arrive, your peace won't protect you. The final message came that night. The Devourer fleet had reached the Nexus Gate, the gravitational anchor that controlled access to the Alliance's most important worlds. They had not attacked yet, but their intent was clear, High Counselor. Vex's crystalline form pulsed with patterns of light that had not been seen since before pacification, the ancient Mindari expression of desperate fear, humans of Earth. He said in a voice that trembled with emotion his people had forgotten how to feel. "We formally request your assistance. Our civilization faces extinction, and we have no knowledge of how to fight for our survival." Captain Morrison looked at the alien who had once offered to lobotomize his entire species for their own good. Now that same alien was begging for the very traits he had wanted to eliminate. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace at the Nexus Gate like a nightmare made real. Their ships were massive, dark constructs covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They moved with predatory grace, formations designed to maximize destruction. Rather than efficiency, Admiral Ben Parker stood on the bridge of the human flagship Washington, watching the enemy fleet through tactical displays. Beside him, Alliance representatives from a dozen species observed their first glimpse of warfare in 3,000 years. "There are over 200 ships," whispered Ambassador Zenth, his gentle voice trembling. "How can so few beings command such violence?" "Because they remember what you forgot," Parker replied. "They remember that sometimes the only way to preserve life is to take it." The human fleet looked tiny compared to the Devourer armada. Earth had sent every available warship, but humanity's entire space navy consisted of only 40 vessels. The Alliance had contributed over 300 ships, but their vessels were converted rescue craft and exploration ships with hastily mounted weapons. "Admiral," reported Captain Morrison from the tactical station, "we're receiving communication from the Devourer flagship." The main screen filled with the image of a being that made the humans step back in recognition. The Devourers looked exactly like what humans might have become if they had chosen pure aggression over controlled violence. They were tall, heavily muscled, with predatory features and eyes that held no trace of mercy or doubt. "Pacified weaklings," the Devourer commander spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "We are Warlord Krex of the True Dominion. We have returned to reclaim what was stolen from us, the right to be strong." High Counselor Thex tried to respond with diplomatic protocols. "Warlord Krex, we welcome you back to civilized space. Perhaps we can find common ground and resolve our differences through peaceful negotiation." Krex's laughter was harsh and mocking. "Peaceful negotiation? You removed the ability to fight from your own minds and call it evolution. You are not civilizations. You are cattle waiting to be slaughtered." The communication ended. The Devourer fleet began moving toward the Alliance defensive positions with obvious intent. Admiral Parker activated the Human Battle Network. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker. Remember your training. The enemy has superior numbers and firepower, but they've been fighting defenseless opponents for who knows how long. They've forgotten how to face real resistance." General Kate Morris, commanding the human ground forces aboard Alliance stations, added her voice to the network. "Every Alliance species that has worked with humans in the past weeks has shown they can learn. Today we find out if they can learn fast enough to survive." The first phase of the battle began when Warlord Krex sent a probe force of 20 ships to test the Alliance defenses. The Alliance commanders responded exactly as their pacified programming dictated, with orderly formations, careful positioning, and attempts to minimize casualties on both sides. The Devourer ships tore through the Alliance line like predators through a herd. Within minutes, 12 Alliance vessels were destroyed with no Devourer losses. "They fight like prey animals," observed Commander Alex Rivera aboard the human destroyer Texas. "They're trying to avoid conflict even while being attacked." Admiral Parker made a decision that would shock both his allies and enemies. "All human ships, break formation. Implement Volfpack Protocol 7. The human vessels scattered like startled fish, abandoning their positions in the Alliance line. To the Alliance commanders, it looked like the humans were retreating in panic. To the Devourers, it looked like their enemies had lost all coordination. Both groups were wrong. The human ships had switched to predator tactics perfected in Earth's naval wars. Instead of presenting a unified target, they became individual hunters moving with apparent randomness, but actually following a complex pattern, designed to confuse and isolate enemy vessels. Captain Nina Torres, now commanding the human cruiser, Montana led her ship in a wide arc that brought her behind the Devourer probe force, targeting their rear guard. All weapons fire at will. The Montana's missiles struck the rearmost Devourer ship before its crew realized they were under attack. From an unexpected direction, the vessel exploded in a ball of flame that lit up the battlefield. The other human ships followed Torres's lead, hitting the Devourers from multiple angles while staying too spread out to be caught in a concentrated counterattack. Within 20 minutes, the probe force was reduced to debris. Warlord Krex stared at his tactical displays in confusion. How did weaklings destroy an entire squadron? These humans fight like predators, finished his tactical officer. They think like hunters, not prey. The second phase began when Krex committed his main force to a direct assault on the Nexus Gate. This time, Admiral Parker had positioned his human ships throughout the Alliance formation, with human officers aboard every major Alliance vessel. Colonel Lisa Hayes found herself on the bridge of a Valerian destroyer, trying to teach the pacified crew how to think like warriors. "Stop trying to avoid hitting them," she shouted as Devourer ships closed in. "Start trying to hit them harder." The Valerian captain, one of the miners who had worked with humans on Kepler 442b, struggled to overcome 3,000 years of genetic programming. "But if we fire all weapons at once, we might cause unnecessary destruction." "Unnecessary destruction is what wins battles," Hayes replied. "Fire everything you have." Major Chris Anderson faced a similar challenge aboard a Mindari command ship. The crystalline beings could process tactical information faster than any human computer, but they kept trying to find peaceful solutions even in the middle of combat. "There is no peaceful solution to someone trying to kill you," Anderson explained. "Sometimes the only choice is to be more dangerous than your enemy." The battle reached its climax when Warlord Krex realized that the humans were not just fighting alongside the Alliance. They were teaching the Alliance how to fight, the pacified. Species were learning, slowly but steadily, to think like predators. Krex made a fatal decision. He committed his entire reserve force to a direct assault on the human flagship, believing that removing human leadership would return the Alliance to helpless prey. Admiral Parker watched the enemy fleet converge on his position and smiled grimly. "All ships? This is Admiral Parker? Execute Operation Shepherd." The human vessels had been scattered throughout the battlefield like sheepdogs managing a flock. Now they revealed their true purpose. Every human ship moved simultaneously, driving the scattered Alliance vessels into a coordinated formation that surrounded the attacking Devourer fleet. Commander Rachel Stone, aboard the human battleship Oregon, found herself leading a mixed squadron of human and Alliance ships in the final charge. The Alliance crews fought with desperate courage, channeling their newfound understanding of controlled aggression into devastating effectiveness. The Devourer fleet, caught in the center of a closing trap, discovered that predators could become prey when faced with superior hunters. Warlord Krex's flagship took direct hits from a dozen different ships before its shields failed. In the final moments, as his ship burned around him, Krex understood what the Galactic Council had never realized. The humans were not just another species that had refused pacification. They were apex predators who had learned to hunt cooperatively, to channel their aggression into protection rather than conquest. "You fight like us," he said over the communication channel as his ship began to break apart, "but you fight for them. How is this possible?" Admiral Parker's response was heard throughout the galaxy. "Because being strong enough to destroy something gives you the choice to protect it instead. That's what makes us human." The battle ended with the complete destruction of the Devourer fleet. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to threaten Alliance worlds again. In the aftermath, High Counselor Thex approached Admiral Parker with something the Mindari had not experienced in millennia: genuine gratitude mixed with profound understanding. "We offered to remove your capacity for violence," Thex said, his crystalline form glowing with complex patterns of light. "We believed aggression was primitive and destructive." "We were wrong." "You weren't completely wrong," Parker replied. "Uncontrolled aggression is destructive, but controlled aggression, The willingness to fight when fighting is necessary, that's what separates civilization from extinction. Ambassador Zenth, who had witnessed the entire battle, spoke for the Alliance Council. We understand now why you refused pacification. Peace is not the absence of the capacity for war. Peace is the choice not to use that capacity against those who cannot defend themselves. The Galactic Council formally invited humanity to join the Alliance, not as students learning to be peaceful, but as teachers showing how strength could serve to protect the weak. Earth became the Alliance's military academy, where new generations learned the art of defensive warfare. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The supreme predators were not those who conquered the weak, but those who chose to defend them. And in that choice, humanity had revealed the true meaning of civilization. Years later, when young beings throughout the Alliance asked why humans were different from other species, the answer was always the same, because they remembered that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be ready for war. Jake Martinez opened his eyes to see nothing but white. Snow fell on his face through the broken glass of his escape pod. His head hurt bad, blood ran down from a cut above his left eye. He tried to move his arms and legs. Everything worked, but his whole body felt like someone had hit him with a hammer. The escape pod lay on its side in the snow. Jake could see through the cracked window that he was on some kind of frozen world. The sky was dark purple, and two small suns hung low on the horizon. This was not Earth. This was not anywhere he knew. He pushed against the pod door. It would not open. Jake kicked it 3 times before it finally broke free. Cold air hit him like a punch to the face. The wind was so strong it almost knocked him down. His breath came out in white clouds that froze before they could blow away. Jake looked around at where he had landed. Ice and snow covered everything as far as he could see. Sharp rocks stuck up from the ground like broken teeth. In the distance, he could see smoke rising from other crash sites. The ship had broken apart when they tried to land. His crewmates were scattered across this frozen hell. The Horizon Dawn had been carrying a mixed crew of humans and aliens on a research mission. Jake was the ship's engineer. He knew every bolt and wire on that vessel. When the engine core failed, he had tried to fix it, but there was not enough time. The captain ordered everyone to the escape pods just before the ship tore itself apart in the atmosphere. Now, Jake stood alone in the snow, wearing only his standard work uniform and a thin emergency jacket. The cold cut through his clothes like knives. His fingers were already going numb. The temperature display on his wrist showed -60 degrees. At this rate, he would freeze to death in less than an hour. Jake heard voices carried on the wind. He walked toward the sound, his boots crunching through the snow. About 200 meters away, he found a group of survivors huddled around the wreckage of a larger escape pod. Most of them were aliens. Commander Vexthal stood in the center of the group. He was a Zephyrian, tall and thin, with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes. His people came from a hot desert world. The commander was shivering even inside his heated survival suit. Around him stood 6 other Zephyrians, all looking miserable in the cold. The humans will not last long in this weather, Vexthal was saying to his crew. Their bodies are too weak. They have no natural protection against the cold. We must focus on saving ourselves and the others who have a chance to survive. Near the wreckage, 3 Klaxon survivors were already digging holes in the ground with their powerful claws. The insect-like aliens moved fast, throwing dirt and ice behind them as they burrowed down. They planned to hide underground until rescue came. 2 Christri had found a sunny spot between some rocks. The silicon-based life forms looked like walking diamonds. They had gone completely still, saving their energy by shutting down all non-essential functions. They could stay that way for days if needed. Jake walked closer to the group. Commander. Vexthal saw him coming and shook his head. Human Jake Martinez. I'm sorry to see you survive the crash only to die in this cold. Your species is not built for such harsh conditions. Perhaps you should make peace with your gods while there is still time. I am not dead yet, Jake said. His lips were already turning blue, and his words came out between chattering teeth. "How long until rescue ships arrive?" "At least 3 days," replied Vexthel. "Maybe longer if this storm gets worse." The weather satellites show a massive cold front moving in. Temperatures will drop even further tonight. Even with our advanced heating technology, we Zephyrians may not survive. Humans have no chance at all. Jake looked around at all the alien survivors. Each species was using their natural abilities or advanced technology to fight the cold. The Zephyrians had portable heating units powered by energy cells. The Klaxons were digging deep burrows to escape the wind. The Crystri could shut down their bodies to use almost no energy, but the aliens were all struggling. The Zephyrian heating units were already running low on power. The Klaxon burrows kept filling with snow and ice. The Crystri could not stay dormant forever. Everyone was just trying to delay the inevitable. Jake saw pieces of the crashed ships scattered everywhere. Broken metal panels, torn insulation, damaged equipment, and other debris covered the landing site. Most of it looked useless, but Jake's engineer mind started working. He had spent his whole career fixing things with whatever materials he could find. This was just another repair job, except this time he was fixing the problem of staying alive. The wind picked up stronger, and snow began falling harder. Jake could barely feel his hands anymore. His feet were going numb inside his boots. The other humans from the crew were nowhere to be seen. They were probably dead already, or soon would. Commander Vexthel activated his emergency beacon and tried to contact the other crash sites. "This is Commander Vexthel calling all survivors. Report your status immediately. We need to coordinate rescue efforts for those who can be saved." Voices crackled over the communicator. Most were alien crew members reporting equipment failures and dropping body temperatures. A few human voices could be heard, but they sounded weak and scared. Jake listened as one by one the human survivors stopped responding to radio calls. "See?" Vexthel said to his crew. "The humans are already dying. We cannot waste time or energy trying to help them. We must focus on keeping ourselves alive until rescue arrives." Jake said nothing. He walked away from the group and began gathering pieces of debris from the crash site. The aliens watched him with curiosity as he collected metal sheets, broken electronics, pieces of insulation, and other seemingly worthless junk. "What is the human doing?" asked one of the Zephyrians. "Has the cold made him crazy?" "Probably," Vexthel replied. "Humans often behave strangely when they are about to die. Just ignore him and focus on our own survival." But Jake was not going crazy. His mind was working clearer than it had in years. He could see exactly what needed to be done. While the aliens relied on their technology and natural abilities, Jake would use the one thing that had kept humans alive for thousands of years before they ever left Earth. He would use his brain.